Ahoy hoy, I'm Planarwalk, and quite often I come across videos where the conclusion is outlandishly wrong, but I can still kind of understand how they got there. However, today we're going to take a look at someone who manages to make leaps in logic so large that you'd almost think that he's invented anti-gravity. So the person that we're going to be looking at today is someone that calls themselves a professor and is named Nigel Cheese. They also go by Nigel Cheese Hands. I don't know why you'd go by Nigel Cheese Hands, but they do. Now I've looked into Nigel Cheese to see what kind of qualifications he has, and he claims to have a PhD in physics, a Masters of Information System Management, a Masters of Science, and a Bachelor of Science. The only issue is that I can't actually find any evidence outside of his own claims that he actually holds those qualifications. But that is not the primary focus of this video. The primary focus of this video is Nigel Cheese's leaps of logic to try and say that 1 + 1 = 1 and that pi is greater than infinity. But I will be making another video on Nigel Cheese's more pernicious aspects in the future because there's actually a surprisingly large rabbit hole when it comes to Nigel Cheese. But for now, Nigel Cheese Hands, take it away.
For those who've actually followed me, my name's Nigel. I'm 50-something, not the best guess.
Now, to me, that sounded like he said, I'm 50-something, best guess. Does this guy not know his own age, or am I just mishearing things?
I used to be a sailor. Then, I had the name of Hands. What I'm about to tell you will either make you cry or make you angry.
Or it might make you laugh, or it might make you facepalm yourself to death.
I said to a group of very, very high-level people, what's 1 and 1? 1 + 1. There's a question. Everybody like yourself turned around and said, oh, it's going to be 2.
Well, that depends what you're doing. If you're using Boolean algebra, then it is 1. And if you're using binary, then it is 10. However, if you're using base 10 like most people, then it is 2. And the only real difference between binary and base 10 there is only the way that you represent the number.
I said, no, it's not. You got it wrong. And I said, why? I said, because of this. As you can see, there's 2 magnets here. How many norths and how many souths? So I've put up in the room, on the board, a magnet with a north and a south. And I said, you have 1 north, you have 1 south, but you have 1 magnet. And I went, yeah, so what? What's so crazy about that? So you put another magnet next to it, you've still only got 1 south, 1 north, and 1 magnet. So 1 + 1 = 1.
So yes, putting 2 magnets together gives you 1 magnet, but those 2 magnets together is not the same as the 2 magnets each by themselves. For example, and I shouldn't have to say this, combining 2 magnets results in a magnet that is more powerful than each of the magnets individually. If it were the case that 2 magnets put together were just as powerful as the magnets individually, then I should be able to break a piece off this magnet, and that piece of the magnet should be just as powerful as the entire magnet. I've done that, and it's not.
And even with inside 1 magnet, you have 1 + 1 = 1. And if you keep going all the way down to the atomic structure, right the way down to hydrogen, you end up with 1 neutron, 1 proton = 1 atom.
I need to point this out, but 1 neutron is not an atom. A neutron by itself is what's called a free neutron, not an atom.
So not only did I trash the principle of Euclidean mathematics based on a magnet, I then went on to scare them.
Does he mean Euclidean geometry? Because if he did, then he hasn't trashed the principles of that at all. All that he's really said here is that if you combine 2 things, you get 1 thing, which no one is really disagreeing with. I mean, yeah, if you combine 2 things, you get 1 thing, but that 1 thing is different to the 2 things when they're separate. There is a whole lot of philosophy about it as well. Take the spoon, for example. It's 1 object, right? Or is it billions and billions of objects which we call atoms? But at the end of the day, if I have a spoon and you give me another spoon, then I'm going to say that I have two spoons. Likewise, if I have a magnet and you give me another magnet and I put those two magnets together, I'm still going to say that I have two magnets because I most likely will be able to pull them apart.
I said you always perceive that infinity looks like that. Whereas if you look at infinity very, very closely, it's actually two circles. When you look at one circle, it's 360 degrees. Plus 360 degrees means infinity is 720 degrees.
Firstly, this here is just a symbol for an infinity. The characteristics of infinity have nothing to do with the symbol that we assign it. And also, it is not two circles because no matter how closely I look, I cannot see two circles there. And thirdly, 8 is about as close, if not closer, to two circles than infinity is. So does that mean that 8 is 720 degrees? And fourthly, even if we accept that infinity is 720 degrees, what does that even mean?
Yeah, so what? So, well, it's not. You got it wrong. Again.
Well, no, you're the one that got it wrong because you're the one that came up with that, so you got it wrong.
Because everything resides around a magnet, a lodestone. They've been here an awful lot longer than us humans. So when you take a magnetic body like so, and you have a north and you have a south, you think that's it. Well, it's not. It goes from there, and then goes around the back, goes over itself, and goes there. And the other one goes the other way. It goes from there, it goes around the back, around the south, and goes there.
Now, I'd like to know what that diagram is actually meant to show, because that doesn't look anything like any magnet I've ever seen. My main question would be, what are those lines even supposed to represent? What is going from north to south? It's certainly not the magnetic field, because the magnetic field does not look like that on a magnet.
So you end up with a loop there, a loop there, a loop there, a loop there. But these two loops are actually one of the same. So you end up with a value here, which is 360 degrees. A value here, which is 360 degrees. A value here, which is 360 and 360. So you have 1,470 degrees.
All he's done is drawn nonsensical lines, turned them into circles, and then claimed that because circles are 360 degrees, we add 360 degrees up 4 times, and that results in 1,440 degrees, but he's actually going to say 1,470 degrees because he clearly forgot what he wrote, and that's supposed to mean something?
In infinity. The problem with that is when you overlay it on the earthbound model of what you humans think you have, you think you've got that, which equals 720, and I've just proven there's that, which is actually 2 times that, or twice infinity.
I clearly missed the part where he said that a magnet is infinity, because maybe he skipped over that part, or maybe we're supposed to assume that because of random lines that he drew.
That did upset an awful lot of physicists and mathematicians in the room.
They probably felt that not only was their intelligence being insulted, but you were also actively trying to lower their intelligence. And on top of that, they're probably wondering why you were getting any speaking time and meant to be taken seriously.
If we take a dot and we claim that dot as 0, we can go in a direction for infinity, like so. But it also means we can go the other way for infinity. And therefore, for infinity to exist, it needs to be 2 times infinity.
So it's very important when doing an axis like that if you've got a positive number in a certain direction, the other direction would be a negative number. Now when you have infinity plus negative infinity, then you actually don't get 0. You'd think you'd get 0, but you actually get undefined. In fact, any operations that you do on infinity, you don't get a number, you don't get infinity, you actually get undefined. Because infinity is more of a concept than an actual number.
That's what you said in a magnet. Furthermore, if you can go that way, 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 you can go that way.
Oh, he discovered the second dimension. Wonder when he'll discover the third.
And anyone who's quite clever, here is the given length in space. And when you do that, you get an arc. Like that. And you do it again. And you do it again. And you do it again. That is pi.
That is a circle, and you have not given any value to it except for saying that it is pi. Now I assume that you're meaning that the circumference is pi, in which case the radius would have to be 0.5 in order to get the circumference of pi.
Therefore, because that curve is longer than the straight line, like that, it means that pi is greater than infinity. Oops.
Well, no, that line has a finite length. The only way that you can have an infinitely long line inside of a circle is if that circle has an infinite size. And a circle with an infinite size would have a radius of infinity, and therefore the circumference of that circle would be 2 pi infinity, which would be undefined. But because you did not define the radius of that circle, it is fair to assume that the radius is of a finite length, and therefore that line will also be of a finite length.
They didn't like that. Well, what else could you do with it, Chief? Because you seem to be saying that everything we've done is wrong. I said, yeah, it is.
Ah, classic top left behaviour, acting like he knows maths better than mathematicians that have done maths their whole lives.
Based on that magnet.
He does realise that maths is generally more of an abstract concept, right? And something like a magnet does not change how maths works, right?
Well, Einstein said E equals mc squared, and that's what we all done, and that's what the planet used, and I said, well, you've all been fools. Because if we look at Bertie's fantastic equation, we have that, which is the energy is equal to the mass times constant squared. But the constant is here and the mass is here.
There's so much wrong with that graph, mostly because if the y-axis is mass, then the bottom axis should be energy. And also, c squared would not have a place on that graph. It would simply describe part of the relationship between energy and mass. It wouldn't actually be on the graphs. Learn how to actually make graphs, please.
You then turned round and said that the constant was 3 times 10 to the power of 8 meters per second. The more mass you put in, the closer you go, the more energy you get out.
No, that's not how it works at all. Energy is not a descriptor for speed. Aren't you supposed to have a PhD in physics? Isn't this something that you should have learnt, like, pretty early on in physics?
We'll take the magnet. It's not moving.
Oh no, I think I know where he's going to go with this. Is he going to claim that because the magnet is not moving that it has a mass of 0? That's where I feel like it's going. Let's see.
It equates to 0. Therefore, 0 times the constant equals 0. 0 times any number, 0. You know that. Well, if that was 0, there's no energy whatsoever, that magnet will fall on the floor.
What? Did he just say that mass was speed or something? What did he even... I am... I need 5 minutes. So I'm still trying to get over the fact that he didn't do what I thought he was going to do, which would have been better than what he actually did, where he conflated mass and speed instead of energy and speed. And not only that, to be affected by a gravitational field, you need to have energy. So if something had no energy, it would not be affected by gravitational fields and thus would not fall to the ground. And not only that, the magnet does have speed because, you know, the Earth is moving, so he's wrong on that count as well. There was a term that I used a long time ago, I think it was fractally wrong, and I think it applies here where it's you're wrong, but even if you were right, you'd still be wrong.
Break down. So the magnet defies E equals mc squared.
Well, I'd say that E equals mc squared defies Nigel's understanding because he does not understand E equals mc squared in the slightest. There's also the fact that, you know, E equals mc squared is not the full equation, and the full equation actually has another term called P, which stands for momentum.
And I said the next thing you've got to look at is a 2D representation of a 3D spatial equation on a piece of paper, where we've only got an x and a y. The problem with that is if you have an origin of 0, and you've got a plus value, you've got a plus value, and you've got a plus value, that gives you a plus value. Well, me, like all of you lot, I've got a bank account. Me, like all of you lot, on occasions have gone in the red, which is a minus. Which means there must be a minus in the equation. You can't have a plus of everything, because even the wavelength, the wobbly bit, or the RF that feeds your Wi-Fi goes like that, up and down, plus and minus, plus and minus. When you open the fridge door, the temperature is minus. Okay?
He debunked himself with the temperature analogy. Let me explain how. So I have never seen a temperature below 0 because you cannot get a temperature less than 0 degrees Kelvin. That is absolute zero. As for negative mass and negative energy, those two things, they have never been observed. So there's no evidence for them actually existing. It would be like if I went, well, imaginary numbers are a thing, so what if I went into my bank and told them that I have some imaginary money and I want them to add that to my bank total? They're gonna laugh and think that I'm crazy.
That means there must be a minus there must be something there, and there must be something there. That means the greatest amount of power must be there, because everything else is going the wrong way. Because the magnet at 0, as a stationary body, is generating more energy at 0 than anything else that's on there.
Well, again, you're wrong, because your stationary magnet would not have nearly as much energy as a brick that is flying through the air. It may seem like your magnet has more energy, but it doesn't, because it does not have as much mass as a brick.
That results in a modification to the equation, and this is where the whole fun started. I said magnetic energy divided by its inertia equals energy. A magnetic inertia magnetic energy divided by the inertia, the gap between here and the board, equals energy, even at 0.
The problem with that equation is that not everything has a large amount of magnetic energy. For example, a brick flying through the air probably doesn't have a whole lot of magnetic energy, at least compared to your magnet. But it has a lot more energy than your magnet. I have no idea how you came up with that equation, but you need to consider that energy is more than magnet do thing.
I said, okay, if you can't do it that way, and you still won't settle for it, we'll dick around with a common thing known as thermodynamics.
Oh, thermodynamics will be fun. I wonder if he's going to be talking about thermodynamics or thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics, and it comes in two flavours. It's got law 1 and law 2.
I mean, there is a third law of thermodynamics as well, but I wouldn't expect you to know about that, seeing as there's a lot that you don't seem to know about.
Law 1 says you can't create matter, you can only change matter from one state to another. Where an example of that is a tank of oil, a tank of fuel, a car engine, we'll do a 4-cylinder one, and drive. And the car goes forward. The fuel goes to the engine and is converted, and that is converted to motion. That means you can't have something for free.
So he kind of butchered that right off the bat. The first law of thermodynamics states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So for the tank of fuel example, you've got fuel which has chemical energy, which is a potential energy. That energy can be converted to kinetic energy, which moves your car.
It means the output product of here is heat from the engine, it's noise from the engine, there's power in motion, and there's friction, and there is wind resistance.
When he said that friction and wind resistance were an output of the car, that physically hurt me. Why am I watching this? Just to be clear, friction and wind resistance are forces that act upon the car. A physicist should know that.
All of them are the converted value of the fuel. You can only convert matter. You cannot create matter. That's what that law says.
Wait. I didn't notice this when he first said it, but he never said that matter could not be destroyed. Does he think that matter gets destroyed in a fuel tank?
A magnet. I am not physically putting any energy whatsoever into that magnetic body. It is stationary, it is null, but it is deriving its own energy and matter for the fact that it's there. Which means that that law fails itself with a magnet.
I think he does. What he's stating makes it seem like he thinks that matter is supposed to be destroyed and turned into energy or something. But anyway, getting back to the magnet and how it's staying there. The reason why it's staying there is because it doesn't need energy to stay there. If it did need energy to stay there, then a lot of heat and or sound would be produced from it staying there, because energy cannot be created nor destroyed. That energy would have to go somewhere, usually in the form of heat or sound. Now, one thing to point out, if you were to pull that magnet away, kinetic energy that you use to pull that magnet away would be converted to magnetic potential energy. I think Nigel's problem is that he doesn't realize the difference between a force and energy, and thinks that they're basically the same thing. Whereas someone with, I don't know, a PhD in physics would be able to tell that they're not the same thing.
The second law is determined as entropy. We can make that one nice and easy. And entropy says you can't have something for free. If we've got our tank of fuel, and we've got our car engine, and we've got our car, the car cannot go for infinity. because the tank will run out of fuel.
So the second law of thermodynamics states that in a closed system, entropy will only increase. And entropy is defined by the amount of usable energy in a system. The more usable energy you have, the lower entropy you have. The lower usable energy you have, the higher entropy you have. Now what Nigel stated was not entropy at all. I mean, it's almost like he doesn't have a PhD in physics.
You can't have something for free. Magnet's not going anywhere. Magnet is zero. Magnet is stationary. The energy holding it onto the board, where did it come from? It defies entropy.
A force holds the magnet to the board, not energy. I feel like I'm actually losing brain cells while watching this. It's amazing. Oh, and just so that we're extra clear, a force does not require any energy. Just had to make sure that we're clear on that one.
So this room of professors and very, very senior Royal Naval military people were going white. That a 28-year-old man who was dyslexic, mate, had trashed in less than an hour Einstein.
Maybe they were turning white because their brain had lost so much functionality that they had forgotten to breathe. And if there was anyone there that had even taken basic physics, they would have seen the issues with what you were saying.
Entropy. The first and second laws, gone. I then went on to screw another man called Sir Isaac Newton.
Okay, that is not really a sex tape that I want to see, so I guess I'm going to end the video right here. Leave a like and subscribe if you like this video, and leave a comment letting me know if you'd like me to make a part 2 where he screws Isaac Newton. I'm not sure that that would be YouTube friendly though, but I'll make it if enough people ask for it. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons. Hugh Jarsz, M.C.Nutkin, SHaKie, Wolfie, Morrie, Graymore Ghost, KidVicious, and Sacha Campbell. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. There should be a link there. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching.